People ask me why I call myself the man in back. It's very simple. That's where I've always been. I've always been a musician who backed up the person standing up at the middle mic. Most people in any kind of entertainment want to be the center of attention. They desire to always be out front so everyone can see them. Not me, I'm the man in back. On May 25th, 1939, James Dixon Capps was born, but you can call me Jimmy. My mom was almost 40 when she had me, and as I was born, the doctor told my mother, the baby is dead.
Take your time.
Sorry.
Don't be.
When I was a little boy, I would dream about being on the Grand Ole Opry. As I dreamed of playing on the Opry, there was no way that I could ever have imagined that I would actually go on to play on that stage more times than anyone else in the history of the Opry. It's still hard for me to believe. When I was a boy, I loved going to the movie theater on Saturday. I loved seeing Roy Rogers and Sunset Carson, Lash LaRue. They were all my heroes. But the price of the ticket was 14 cents. But you could buy at the drugstore right next door, you could buy a root beer for 6 cents. Big root beer. And so I did that and naturally drank the whole thing. Well, I watched the movie twice. Well, it was dark when I was going home. And the root beer had to come out. I had overdone the root beer. I shouldn't have drank it all, but I did. Anyhow, I knew there was a restroom, like a outhouse, behind the hardware store. So I knew I could run and make it to that because I knew I couldn't make it home in time, so you could open the door and it was pitch dark back there, no lights at all. And so I opened the door and started to pee into the outhouse, to what I thought was the hole. And I heard this voice say, "Boy, you're a peeing on me." Well, that stopped the pee, and I ran all the way home. I'm telling you, scared. I was afraid he was right behind me.
All right.
What, was somebody working on it or something?
Huh?
No, he was in there, sitting there.
Oh, the old man was in there, and he was sitting down, and I was peeing on him. As a boy, my real guitar hero was a guy named Hayden Ivey. He was really popular in my hometown because he was such a great guitar player, great musician. And as luck would have it, Hayden's duet partner was James Thornton, my boss from the grocery store. When he found out that I could play the guitar, he asked me to be a part of their group. I had landed my first professional job at the ripe old age of 13. I thought the Louvin Brothers were the greatest duet I had ever heard. I was auditioning for the Louvin Brothers, and Paul Yandel, their then guitar player who had been drafted, he kind of shunned me a little bit and kind of looked away from me. But then he turned back around and he said, "Jimmy, why don't you play us an instrumental?" And I said, "Well, okay, Paul, what would you like to hear?" And he said, "How about Malagueña?" And I said, "Boy, I don't know Malagueña, Paul, I'm sorry." And Charlie Louvin said, "Paul, me and Irie hardly ever sing Malagueña anymore." So they hired me. I didn't know it at the time, but when I, as they say, hired on to them, they were not members of the Opry. They had quit the Opry and gone to Wheeling, West Virginia. and was doing that jamboree. But they came back. They never left Nashville. Their homes were still here. But they called and said we were going to do the Opry. It was in December of '58. And man, I was sick with, I didn't know it then, but it was double pneumonia. It got diagnosed on Sunday afterward. But I said, I'm going to go play the Opry if it kills me, you know. So I did. And the first song we played was the Knoxville Girl that I played on the Opry in 1958. And then they re-signed, I think, in January to the Opry. And then we played it from then on. Ann was from Raleigh, North Carolina. We met when she was 16, I was 15. We got married 4 years later. After we got married, I had to go to Alabama to meet the Louvins to play some dates with them down there. And we stayed with the Louvins' parents. And my new bride wasn't really impressed because the Louvins' parents had no indoor plumbing. I was on the road with Charlie Louvin after the duet had split up, and we were in Virginia. We had played the Old Dominion Barn Dance, or I think then it was called the New Dominion Barn Dance. And we were headed to play, I call them hillbilly parks. It was an outdoor park in Virginia. I can't remember the name of the town, but we drove over there to work on Sunday. And when we got to the gate, the entrance gate, the guy said, Mr. Louvin, you have an emergency phone call. So Charlie went to the office, and he came back, and he was white as a sheet, you know, when he came back. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, Ira got killed last night. Man. Man, reliving all this stuff is not cool. He said Ira got killed last night in a car wreck. But he went ahead and did the show. And I took him to the airport. He flew home, and me and the bass player drove the car back to Nashville. You should never pass up the chance to tell a friend that you love them, because you never know when it's going to be the last time. Throughout all these decades, I've also enjoyed a great career as a studio musician. I was blessed to be a part of some classic songs. I was honored to play on 40 #1 songs that Ronnie Milsap had. I was honored to play also on a bunch of barbaramandrell hits, including I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool. I was honored to be on The Gambler, the Kenny Rogers hit. And one of the things I tell everybody that's so cool is you heard myself and Ray Eddington 4 bars before you ever heard Kenny sing, because we had the intro on the song. I was on a great album that Tom Jones did in Nashville.
One more time.
I was on a great album. At least it's a laugh and not a cry.
Yes.
I was on a great album that Tom Jones did in Nashville. The song Darling was on that album, but I cannot remember one thing about the session. I'm so sorry, Tom, but you probably don't remember me either. I was also on a lot of hits that the Oakridgeboys had. You can hear me on the georgestrait records of Unwound, Let's Fall to Pieces Together, and Amarillo by Morning. I was also on George Jones's He Stopped Loving Her Today and Tammywynette's record of Stand By Your Man. I also played on a lot of gospel sessions, and the Henson family, who had just started kind of in the gospel field, recording. And they had me play on the Lighthouse, which became a gospel standard. They tell me that I played on, for a couple of decades, 500 sessions per year. I hope that's true. People talk about all the classic hits I played on, but when you play on that many sessions, you're bound to cut a hit every now and then. In 1974, I was asked to record my very own album. They wanted me to do an instrumental album that they could market to truck drivers. And for the front cover, they used a photo of a girl in a bikini standing on a big truck. I'm pretty sure that they thought she would sell more albums to truckers than I would. Being married to a musician is not easy, but Ann never complained. In 2005, Ann had a brain aneurysm. I found her on the bathroom floor. I couldn't wake her up. They operated on her and was able to stop the bleeding, but there was too much damage. She never regained consciousness. Ann and I had been married 47 years. Up until 2009, I had been blessed with a very successful life. I didn't know it, but my life was fixing to change abruptly to even bigger and better things that I had no idea was coming. And it was all because of a little diner, a fictitious diner. Larry told me I could either be the sheriff or the mayor. I told Larry, I said, I think I look more like a sheriff. Plus, I like donuts. It's funny how this business works. After playing on many, many hit records and traveling the road with some really big artists, working the Opry for 60 years, going on 61, it's amazing what one little TV show can do for you. Now I'm recognized as the sheriff from being on Larry's Country Diner. And it just amazes me because really more people hear your name and get used to seeing you in one show than probably would see you during your whole career if you didn't work TV. The power of television is really amazing. In 1995, I met a girl named Michelle. She was a singer, a very good singer, and we did a kind of a pop album on her over at Oak Valley Studios. Probably one of the best things ever happened to me was meeting her. Michelle worked for the post office, and she had a route where she carried the mail, a walking route, and she sang as she walked. So she was known as a singing letter carrier. I knew that I could overlook the fact that she was younger and much more beautiful than I was. I was so busy playing sessions through the 60s and 70s, and my schedule was packed. I really didn't need to keep playing on the Grand Ole Opry, but I did. The other studio musicians would ask, man, why do you keep doing that? And I'd always respond, well, it's really like a family. It's like being a member of the country club, where we get together to tell stories and laugh and play good music. As long as they'll let me, I'll be there. I was saying that in 1970 and 1980 and 1990 and 2000. And I still say the same thing today as we are now into the 2020s. In October 2015, Merle Haggard played the Opry, which turned out to be the last time he would be on the Opry. His son, Ben, was playing guitar for him, and I went over to tell Ben how great I thought he played behind his dad. And Ben said, did you get to talk to Dad? And Michelle and I were standing together, and we said, no. He said, well, come on, go with me to the bus. I know he'd want to see you. We went to the bus, and we walked in the bus, and he saw us, and he was sitting back there with his wife. He saw us, and he said, I've been watching you on the diner. And he said, I can tell when you don't play what you think you should have played. I said, yeah, I bet you can, you know. But anyhow, we sat and visited with him, and Connie Smith was there, Jesse McReynolds was there, and we thoroughly enjoyed our visit with him. But as we were getting off the bus, I said, you ought to do the diner. And I can't imagine just me and Merle Haggard doing the diner. But it never happened because about 6 months later, he passed. On March 16, 2014, I was given an honor that was so huge. I had never even dreamed of getting it. I was inducted into the Musicians Hall of Fame. And over the last couple of years, in my free time, I wrote a little book. And I was totally overwhelmed by the response to my autobiography. I didn't think anyone would buy it, but they did. Thousands did. When I look back at my life, I use the word blessed a lot. I had thought about naming my book that, Blessed. I think that one word sums up my life.